It's hard to believe that someone you love would end up hurting you the most. But this is the reality for victims of domestic violence. According to the World Health Organization, intimate partner violence is a worldwide epidemic that affects 30% of women. In Malaysia, it is estimated that 9 of every 100 households will have a woman who has experienced domestic violence. It is not easy for women to accept that they have stumbled into an abusive relationship, but the hardest part is to break away from it.
Yet, the majority of Malaysians believe domestic violence is acceptable, and it is found that the awareness of domestic violence against women is low in Malaysia. Hence, the aim of this training program is to raise awareness of domestic violence among women and girls. It is hoped that through educating women and girls about domestic violence, they will be able to recognize the warning signs of abuse and safeguard themselves. Let us begin the training program without further ado by watching a brief video about domestic violence.
What is domestic abuse? Do grown-ups often argue at home? Does it make you sad or angry? Every family has arguments. But domestic abuse is where one adult is always trying to make everyone else in the family do what they want, by hurting or bullying them. Domestic abuse isn't just about hurting someone physically. It can also be about hurting someone emotionally, especially when one parent often makes the other feel bad. For example, if one parent often tries to control how all the money is spent, then this is domestic abuse. Or if every day a parent tries to control who everyone in the family can see and what they can do. Domestic violence can happen to anyone, no matter where you come from, whether you're rich or poor, or whatever you look like.
Generally, there are 5 common types of domestic violence, which are physical abuse, financial abuse, emotional abuse, stalking and isolation. Stabbing, beating, hitting, burning, or even withholding physical needs like food or sleep of the victims, as well as withholding help when the victim is sick, are examples of physical abuse which might cause varying degrees of severity. Emotional abuse will be harder to quantify, yet it is identifiable from the words and actions the abuser uses to tear down the self-esteem of the victim. Emotional abuse specifically targets the emotional and psychological well-being of a person. Financial abuse may happen in the form of limiting the victim to access funds, taking away the victim's ability to earn money, and using the victim's money without authorization. Stalking includes terrorizing behavior like watching the victim from a distance, breaking into the victim's home, or following the victim through daily activities. These actions cause the person on receiving end to fear physical harm to themselves, whilst isolation is the abuser wants to maintain control over the victims, which might keep the victims away from their family, friends and colleagues who may attempt to offer advice or protection. Do you know? In the year 1994, Malaysia published the Domestic Violence Act, which provides legal protection for victims of violence in the home and supplements the offences under the Penal Code in terms of protection for the victims.
Memang dia kalau tarik lidah tu, pegang kepala dia akan bawa sisir knock. Lepas itu dia akan pindah-pindah, dia akan pukul atau pindah apa saja yang dapat pada dia.
Keadaan ni berlaku berulang kali. Bila Ida kena pukul, dia balik dengan mak. Lepas tu Jamal pujuk, dia akan balik ke ikut suami dia. Dia memang pandai pujuk.
Understanding the causes of domestic violence against women is critical if the cycle of violence is to ever be broken. There are 5 factors that may lead to domestic violence. The first is learned behavior. Domestic violence could be learnt over time through observation of family and community. And once the abuser is not penalized for their violence, this learned behavior is said to be reinforced, as they will believe that men have the right to use force to control women in relationships. As a result, it could be said that domestic violence against women can be prevented if the abuser is punished. Remember, violence is a learned behavior but not caused by genetics. Second, cultural issues also contribute to the high prevalence of domestic violence. The inaccurate cultural defense, such as arguing that violent behavior is a part of their culture as a means of expressing love, should not be an explanation for domestic violence. Women may also choose to conceal the fact that they are being abused because of cultural beliefs. Please take note that violence against women is not cultural, it is a crime. Domestic violence could also be caused by organic or psychiatric deficits in the abusers and is known as illness-based violence. Luckily, if domestic violence is caused by illness, it could well be effectively controlled through medical or mental health interventions. A desire to control also contributes to domestic violence against women and girls. It often occurs in relationships where the husband has a desire to control the wife's life, travel, money, etc. It is a form of emotional abuse and sometimes escalates into physical abuse. Also, studies found that women with low self-esteem are more likely to experience domestic violence as they believe they do not even deserve to be loved and can't do better than their current situation. Here, the abuser is given the opportunity to abuse. Domestic violence is worsened by the abuser's low self-esteem, which he tries to hide by degrading others.
Diorang cakap, kami tak pernah tengok kecederaan yang macam ni pada seorang perempuan. Kalau lelaki, kami boleh terima. Kalau perempuan, kami tak pernah tengok kecederaan yang macam ni.
Ayah bau. Postmortem.
Hancur. Dalam dia semua hancur. Organ-organ dalaman dia hancur. You imagine macam mana tu?
Therefore, the impacts of domestic violence are terrifying. There are 5 major effects caused by domestic violence. The domestic violence victims are abused by their family members or someone they trust. And they suffer from physical effects such as bruises, burns, broken bones, head injuries, internal bleeding, miscarriage, and even death. Under sections 323 to 326 of the Penal Code, the person may be sentenced to imprisonment for a term up to 20 years, as well as a fine or whipping due to voluntarily causing grievous hurt to the victims. Depression, fear, anxiety, OCD and PTSD are common impacts and strongly embedded inside their mental health. It is undeniable that this is a long-term effects, although they are already escaped from domestic violence. In most cases, the victims are forced to beg for money and financially rely on the perpetrators. They feel that they are not able to escape due to lack of education and skills, but only way to survive is to stay under the perpetrators. Where are you now? Who are you talking with? What are you doing? Why you didn't receive my call? Victims suffer from these controls and abuse. They unable to perform well at work. Late, absent, distracted, exhausted at work, affects the working colleagues when living under domestic violence. The victims might lose their jobs. In this case, the victims are eligible to obtain an interim protection order provided under Section 4 of the Domestic Violence Act 1994, which is a court order to protect the victim from being abused by the abuser throughout the police investigation. Children are the witnesses of these tragedies, which severely impact their growth and development. They experience emotional and behavioral problems such as low self-esteem, aggression, anxiety, PTSD, etc. The childhood experiences of abuse might cause adulthood to repeat the domestic violence again. Therefore, how can a woman protect herself against domestic violence, or what can she do if she is being abused? The liberating first step toward rescue and healing is speaking up. This is related to the reasons that by exposing domestic violence, abusers who attack the victim could no longer remain in the shadows. Domestic violence is, as previously said, a crime. Also, women who have been victims of domestic violence are advised to speak out about their experiences, as they may receive assistance from others which may also be able to assist others. For instance, a domestic violence survivor reported that confiding in others gave her more strength, support, and connection, which eventually saved her life. Next, educate yourself. Women could educate themselves by understanding the facts about women's violence and the prevalence of it. Therefore, women will be more prepared to respond and overcome domestic violence after grasping the mechanics of the issue, which would also help them to avoid or end an unhealthy relationship. Furthermore, seek for relationship counseling whenever you suspect your relationship is in trouble. Relationship counseling or couples counseling is a type of psychotherapy that helps people resolve relationship conflicts. It enhances their emotional well-being, strengthen their bonds, and improve their communication skills, which help women to develop a greater ability to physically protect themselves from abuse.
I wanted to be part of this because I want to feel myself that what woman has actually felt when she gets into all this trouble, and कोई भी बंदा इस चीज़ को predict नहीं कर सकता until or unless खुद उसका एक part ना हो. So I am part of this campaign because I wanted to get into this and feel for myself.
Women are urged to participate actively in domestic violence awareness campaigns, as it is the most efficient and effective method of disseminating information and increasing awareness of the prevalence of abuse. It is also an encouraging action to achieve social change, and serve as a reminder to the victims that there is always people who cares and will never be silenced. Lastly, women are encouraged to acquire self-defense training, so that they can protect and defend themselves from violence. This is because self-defense training not only equips women with information and responses to violence acts, but also may boost health, confidence, and self-esteem, which indirectly reduces domestic violence rates.
It's okay, don't worry. We're here to help you.
Women and girls, if you need help, just call the 24 hours helplines in confidence.